Welcome to In Her Voice, a podcast created for women who listen to and live by their deepest wisdom, their inner voice. This was made for you, the woman who feels pulled to more, to lead, to create, to dream, and to be a world changer. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am an inner voice coach. Join me here each week as we explore what it means to reach for your inspired potential, all while honoring your worthiness each and every day. Hello, everyone. This is Kelly, and I am so excited that you're here with me today on In Her Voice. I have another amazing interview all about leaving diet culture with Kim Daniels. This interview is so good, and I coupled this purposefully with the last interview I did with Dr. Alexis Conason, which was episode 262. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, I coupled them purposefully because, number one, I think this is a really important topic that we need to be talking about. Number two, it's something that I'm living right now, and I feel that the questions that I have are questions that other people have. And number three, I think it's so wonderful to hear perspective and wisdom in the same area from two different people. And I am really excited to bring this interview to you for that very reason. And if you haven't listened to Alexis Conason's interview, after you're done here, you can go listen to that you don't have to listen to them in any particular order. But however you do it, if you are ready to take a stand against diet culture and really stand up for yourself. This is about standing up for yourself. It's about standing up for other women and people in this world. If you're ready, this is where you can start. And I am really proud of these interviews, and I hope that you enjoy them. Before we get to the actual interview, I want to remind you that my new pocket journal called Give Yourself Permission, Pocket Permission Slips for Self-Care and Compassion, is available for purchase on Amazon.com. It is a sweet, tiny little journal that you can keep in your purse, that you can keep on your desk, and you can use it to write yourself permission for how you want to be showing up in this world. It takes courage to change your beliefs. It takes courage to change your mind. It takes courage to stand up for yourself and say, no, I'm going to do this, and to take a different path. And that's true, especially so when it comes to taking care of yourself and loving yourself. And so this is the first in a series. There will be more coming, so stay tuned. But for now, you can check it out. And if you want the link for that, you can go to kellycovert.com/books. And there's a web page there that has all of the books that are available to you, including the Enoughness Planner, which, by the way, both make wonderful Christmas and holiday gifts, and they make great gifts for yourself. So check those out. If you have any questions, of course, I want to hear from you. But this is something that I made from my heart, and I hope that you love it. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today, Kim Daniels. Dr. Kim Daniels is a clinical psychologist, certified intuitive eating counselor, and emotional eating coach who's on a mission to create an army of women who never deny themselves the food they love, who treat themselves with the compassion and respect they deserve, and who value themselves and their bodies, and who never diet again. This is a juicy and passionate conversation. I think that you're going to love it. This is not a sit back and relax. This is a sit up on the edge of your seat. Grab some paper if you feel like you might need to take notes, because we are starting a revolution. Let's get right to it. Welcome, Kim Daniels, to In Her Voice. I am so excited to have you here today with me.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and we're talking about, actually, I want to rephrase that. We're taking on the topic of leaving diet culture today. And this is huge, and it's big, and it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I am thankful for you to be here to do this with me today. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having me. And I agree with you. It's one of those things that it feels so heavy. It's like, ugh. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm with you with that.
Yeah. So, for those of you who are listening, there may be some things that are triggering in our conversation, and I just want you to be aware of that. And if this is not the right time for you to listen to this episode, you can come back to it when you're ready. But I do think that with Kim, we'll really be able to be gentle with
Mm-hmm.
everything, and I'm excited about this. So let's start first with the words diet culture.
Yeah.
Okay. So you are a clinical psychologist
Mm-hmm.
turned intuitive eating coach.
Yes.
Correct? Did I say all of that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
you did. Yes.
And so, like, from your perspective, your professional perspective, what do you mean by diet culture?
Well, I mean, diet culture really is huge. It's not necessarily just diets. It is obviously, it's the weight loss industry. It's the surgical industry. It's the fitness industry. But it's also just this culture of we're never good enough and we always need to be working on ourselves. Like our bodies aren't right the way they are. And that could mean size. That can mean the color of our skin. That can mean all of those things. Because diet culture is also absolutely born out of, racism and ableism and all those things. So it really just is this whole institution of, especially as women, we are supposed to always be working on weight loss. We are supposed to always be trying to perfect ourselves, and we're always supposed to be controlling ourselves, really, and ignoring our hunger and ignoring our body cues and putting all of our time and energy into appearance and weight and, the number on the scale, the size of our jeans, all of those kinds of things. So it really is just this whole culture that supports, again, more so for women than men, but just that our time and energy should be put towards these things, weight loss, appearance, all of those things.
Yeah. And like you said, that is really far reaching. And I will even venture to say that there's a really fine line between personal development, which, that's what I do.
Right.
Right. And this idea that there's something wrong with us, we need to fix ourselves.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's why I really want to tread lightly with this, because I will be very transparent with everyone today and say that I feel for me that I am just now at the point where I really feel comfortable talking about leaving diet culture. Mm-hmm. And that's because if I talked about it before, and honestly, I have had guests on before talking about intuitive eating and, health at every size. And if I'm being completely transparent, I was not being completely honest with myself yet.
Sure.
About how I was feeling about that. I think I was still in a place of like, well, I want to lose weight, or, I should be eating this and that and the other. And, we can convince ourselves of a lot of things.
Yes. Well, especially because of all the messaging, all of those things have been supported. And I think, to say, it takes a long time, to, like you said, it's like you've thought about these things, you've interviewed people about these things, but, to logically know something is one thing, but to sort of really take that in and say, what, this is the move I need to make is a totally other thing. And it takes time. And I went through the same process, I used to work with people on weight loss, for goodness sakes. Mm-hmm. And so, it wasn't until I sort of, found health at every size and intuitive eating and really started thinking, talk about listen to your inner voice. that was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Oh, this is why all this other stuff didn't really ever feel good to me and wasn't working for my clients. And so, yeah, I mean, I've done, I feel like I've done a lot of that work alongside my clients because I have to, I mean, right. I can't be a proponent of that if I'm not doing the work myself. And it takes time. It absolutely takes time. So, and wherever you are in that process, and, and I have people that, I mean, it's funny because everybody thinks, okay, I should quit diet culture and I should be an intuitive eater within like a week and a half. And, and so it's like, well, how come I haven't gotten that yet? But it's, there are people who have been doing this for years who still have those moments of, oh, maybe I should go on another diet. Maybe I should, try to lose a little weight before the wedding or the reunion or whatever. And that's normal. I mean, we're just bombarded with those messages that that's what we're supposed to be doing. So of course it takes time. And of course we still have those moments of, maybe intuitive eating isn't the way to go.
Okay. So I'm going to say a lot of things today and they're going to feel very sort of inflammatory, and I'm doing that on purpose.
Okay.
Because I'm playing devil's advocate, and I think what I'm willing to do today, and I'm not saying that I believe all of these things. I might have believed them at one point in my life. I don't think I do anymore, but I think that a lot of people are going to have the thought in their mind that I'm going to share. And so I think that's the best way to do it. What would you say to people who like this idea of HAES, health at every size is what that means, or intuitive eating is just an excuse to be overweight and eat whatever you want?
Oh, this is such a popular idea. The idea that it's, in air quotes, glorifying obesity is horrifying. And I mean, I think folks that are saying that are really obviously caught up in the diet culture that we all are. And again, that's understandable because we're all sort of, we're just fed that. But there is actually a lot of research. I think people, first of all, they don't truly understand the concepts of that. And I didn't either. Especially with intuitive eating, it's this idea that intuitive eating means eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and nobody cares. And that's not at all what intuitive eating is. And it's funny, when I was training for the certification to be an intuitive eating counselor, I was training with Evelyn Tribole, who is one of the co-creators of intuitive eating. And she was saying it's no wonder people believe that, because when you look at like social media, people are posting about intuitive eating and it's all got cupcakes and donuts everywhere. That's always sort of the image that you see. So there's this idea out there that it's just eat whatever you want, and it's not at all. And so, for folks who really believe that, again, it's just this excuse to to glorify these things, I would really encourage you to look at actually what it's about. Health at every size is more of a social movement than it is, an approach to anything. It really is about just recognizing that everybody comes in a different shape and size, and that there are multiple aspects of health. Not just our weight, not just how we eat, not just how we move. There are, your zip code can determine your health status. So there's so many things that contribute to health, and health at every size is really just trying to make that known. And again, intuitive eating is really all about connecting to your body and listening to what your body is telling you that it needs. And so, your body tells you that it needs nutritious foods. Right? So it's not just this, oh, great, I can eat cupcakes and donuts and chips and whatever. That's not the point. The point is that all of those things are sort of neutralized, and there's no morally superior food. But the whole point is to really eat in a way that serves your body well physically. And that means also eating very nutritious foods too. So I mean, I would just encourage anybody who's like, oh, that's an excuse, that's a whatever, like really, try to kind of put that aside and really look, really kind of dig into these things and and learn more about them, because I think there's an assumption made about these approaches that isn't accurate.
Mm-hmm. And I love that. And like you said, there is a lot of scientific research
yes,
about weight and its correlation to health,
yes,
and what that looks like. And I agree that that's not what gets headlines.
No. And I will say, I mean, again, having trained with Evelyn Tribole, and I did not, Evelyn Tribole and Elise Suresh are the creators of intuitive eating. And I haven't met Elise, but I can tell you that Evelyn is a research junkie, and she's incredibly adept at interpreting research. And so they didn't just pull this out of the sky. I mean, they cite, and so does Christy Harrison in her anti-diet book. There's a ton of research out there that supports the idea that weight does not equal health. Mm-hmm. And again, that there's, millions of other factors that contribute to our health. There's a ton of research out there, but like you said, that's not what's getting known. And sadly, that's not really what our medical community is often looking at either. So, but yeah, it's not, these aren't just concepts that somebody made up that are based on nothing. They absolutely are based on science.
Mm-hmm. I love that because, as woo-woo as I am, and people know that, I still think like I love it when these concepts go together, like where we can listen to our intuition and have that be backed by science.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
That feels really good to me. And okay, so that was a great answer to my first triggering question.
Thank you.
Okay, here's another one. I know a lot of women. Every woman that I know has dieted.
Uh-huh.
I do not know a woman who has not.
Mm-hmm.
I do not know a woman who has not been concerned with the size of her body. Mm-hmm. And that includes people feeling like they're too skinny.
Mm-hmm.
And so overarchingly though, when I talk to women now about where this comes from, like about this feeling that they always have to be on a diet, they say, well, I feel like if I'm not monitoring my food,
yes,
I'm going to feel like I'm out of control.
Yes.
And I think that's so interesting because some of the people who say this to me are like the most in control people that I know.
Right. So it doesn't make any sense, right?
And I feel like, really? Like you really don't trust yourself. And so I feel like this idea of control versus the idea of trusting yourself, they are at odds here when you're trying to leave diet culture. Can you talk about how we can understand control in a different sort of way?
Oh, I love this question. The most important thing to think about diet culture to me is that it was created to make somebody money off of your insecurity, number one.
Yes. Say that again.
It was created, yes, to make someone money off of your insecurity.
This is about money.
This is always about money. It's never been about health. It's been about making money, and it's been about being better than other cultures and other races. Like, that's where it started. So it's never been about health. We've turned it into health, but it's never been about health. And so you're absolutely right. There's this idea that if we aren't dieting, we are going to be completely and utterly out of control. And so diets absolutely teach you that you cannot trust yourself. And therefore, I always have to be dieting. If I can't trust myself, I always have to be dieting. And it doesn't help that there's so much, like, we've made eating so complicated that nobody knows how to do it correctly anymore. It's like macronutrients and how many grams of this and like, it's so complicated that people definitely feel like if I'm left to my own devices, I have no idea how to eat. And I have people say that to me all the time. Okay, so I'm ready to give up diet culture, but what do I eat?
Yes.
But getting back to the idea of control, the thing of it is control in a sense of dieting is not control at all. It's obsession. And it actually leads to feeling out of control. And for anybody who hasn't really gotten to the point yet of being ready to sort of stop dieting, and again, that's completely understandable. But I see this time and time again with my clients that, again, there's this absolute fear. If I give up dieting, I am just going to start binging, and I'm just going to start this, and I'm just going to be gluttonous, and I'm going to eat, 24/7. And in the beginning, absolutely, some folks do. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm allowed to have this food that I haven't let myself have in forever. And they eat that for a while. I mean, I'll be totally honest with you. I did the same thing. But after a while, it's like, now that I trust myself to give myself those favorite foods when I want them, again, not 24/7, but when I want them, all of that kind of dies down. And so people get to a point where they control isn't the goal. Freedom is the goal.
Yes.
So
yes.
It really is about, I can eat what I like to eat. And when I do that, because the thing of it is dieting is actually the thing that leads to binge eating most of the time. Because you restrict, and then, you're physically starving and you're emotionally starving, and you just say, okay, forget it. I'm going off of the diet, or it's a situation of, somebody brought ice cream into the house. I better eat the whole thing and get it out of here so that I can go back on my diet tomorrow. So diets lead to like binge eating and feeling out of control. And so this whole idea of control is just not even, it shouldn't be the goal, and it doesn't exist while you're dieting. It feels like it. And people feel like, when you're trying to, count those calories and measure your food and do it absolutely perfectly, you're always going to feel like you're doing it wrong to some degree. Right. And so people then sort of really, I better diet even harder then, because gosh, when I allowed myself to have a little bit of bread, I ate half the loaf. So see, I can't trust myself. I better cut out all carbs. And again, that just eventually leads, like, nobody can keep that unless you really have an eating disorder, which, diets can lead to that as well. You can't keep that up long term. Yeah. And so, again, it just reinforces this idea that you can't trust yourself. But really and truthfully, and I know it's so hard to even imagine this if you're at the beginning stages of this, but you will get to a point where you can have the foods around that you like, and it's like, do I want to eat those right now? Not really. Okay, I'm walking right by. Yeah. And again, that's freedom. That's freedom. And to me, that's what the goal should be.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any woman on the planet that wouldn't say they want freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that is like, that's one of my core values in my life, really. I've done a lot of work around that, and it is. And so that includes being free from having to think about food all the time.
Yes. I mean, talk about freeing up time and space.
Yes.
To be, I can get very sort of political about all of this stuff, but it's like, women would be running the world if we weren't focused on this so much. It's not
100%.
Yeah. It's, I always love to share the fact that like the first Miss America contest happened in 1921, the year after we got the right to vote. That's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. So, it's we are spending, all of this time, energy, and money on these things, and we only have a limited resource of time, energy, and money, and we're not putting it towards other things that, could be really benefiting us.
100%. One of the things that sort of came to my mind while you were talking about this is that anybody who has dieted, so everyone,
right,
actually knows a lot about food.
Yeah.
Like I think to myself, I mean, I've done nutrition. I have a nutrition certification.
Okay.
So like I've gone in deep. And I've read the books on fasting, and I've read the books on paleo, and I've read the books on counting your macros and how much protein, carbs, fat you're supposed to have. Like I know information wise, I know so much, but what all of that information, when I'm trying to implement it in whatever way, shape, or form any given diet says, what all of that knowledge keeps me from is the knowledge that my body has.
That's so, oh my gosh, you're so spot on with that. Diet culture completely takes us away from our inner voice. Like our inner voice isn't even around with diet culture. It's all about these external rules. And it has nothing to do with whether you're hungry. It has nothing to do with how full you are. It has nothing to do with what you want to eat. So you're absolutely right. When you're following all of those things, you're not listening to your body at all. And your body, and again, that goes back to the trust thing. Oh my gosh, if I let my body eat whatever it wants, it's going to want all of this, quote unquote junk food. And you know what? And again, in the beginning, maybe it does because you haven't been giving it any of those fun foods. But eventually your body is going to be craving very nutritious, nourishing foods. Your body will tell you these things. Your body tells you, again, when it needs energy, when it's full, what you're hungry for. It will tell you all of those things. And diet culture takes us that's not even a part of the process with diets.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what I love about intuitive eating is it is another way. It is another way to practice connecting with your inner voice.
Yes.
And because we have to eat every day.
Right.
Like that's a requirement. And so it's like journaling. It's like meditating. Mm-hmm. It's like, asking yourself what are the most important things that you're going to do in any given day and listening to that answer from your inner voice. Every time I go into the kitchen, that's where I am.
Yeah.
I'm connecting in, and it's just another time that I get to practice that. And the beautiful part of it too is like what you were saying about time. I used to spend a lot of time, like hours a day, tracking my food and thinking about food and figuring out what I was going to eat next or what I was going to eat the next day or how all of the things added up together. And now the only time I think about food is when I'm hungry.
Right. And isn't that freeing?
Yes.
Like it's so, yeah. And
yes.
So I think, the people who really feel like, oh my gosh, like this is the only way to feel in control. Like, did that feel like control to you? Because, to me, it's anxiety provoking and it's obsessive and it's perfectionistic and it's all of those things that are just, as opposed to just, oh, am I hungry? No? Okay. Moving on. Yeah.
Well, what I like about, like you said, you just said perfectionistic. Mm-hmm. Control is the same as perfectionism.
Sure.
I think, and, I go to Brene Brown's work when talking about perfectionism, and it's a shield, and you think that it's going to protect you from feeling the things that you don't want to feel.
Right.
But it doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. And so instead of protecting you from feeling guilt and shame, it actually causes you to feel guilt and shame. And then you get in a spiral of that. And it's really difficult to get out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, taking it like a step further in terms of, what you were saying before about how this really intuitive eating really is another way of practicing sort of listening to that inner voice. It's also a way of knowing how you're feeling emotionally. Our feelings live in our bodies. And, when you're so disconnected from your body, you're not really able to even understand what you're feeling. And, and that, of course, this is probably a whole other topic, but, that can go into sort of using food for distraction and things like that. But, intuitive eating, when you start practicing intuitive eating and you start connecting to your body, you're also connecting to sort of your emotional state too, which certainly as a psychologist, that's important to me. But, I think that's a benefit that people don't often think about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to talk about something that I think is a fear. If I stop controlling everything I put in my mouth and I let myself eat what I want, that I will probably, and this was true in my case, I will sort of go to the other end of the spectrum and eat all of the things that I haven't let myself eat for so long. And then I will probably gain weight. And right now, I find myself right now in the biggest body that I've lived in with the exception of when I was pregnant. And that to me is hard
Sure.
And so how do we navigate that?
That is I think you're absolutely right. That is a huge fear. I mean, I think most people would give up dieting if they knew for sure they would, stay at a size that they liked.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. We were told from day one that large bodies are not as good as small bodies. And so it absolutely makes sense to have this fear that my body could get larger, and life is harder in a larger body. Like there's no denying that. There's absolutely discrimination. There's absolutely, fat phobia. There's all of those kinds of things. And so it really, I feel like this is one of the hardest pieces, is really working on that self-acceptance that, yes, you're absolutely not, there are people who sort of go through intuitive eating and they stay the same. There are some people who go through intuitive eating and they end up losing weight because they're really working on their relationship with food. And there are people who gain weight. You're absolutely right. And there's really kind of no way to know where you might land with that, which is, again, terrifying. That's terrifying. Mm-hmm. So there has to be, sort of this work about self-acceptance. There's a wonderful body positivity movement going on, which I think is fantastic, but it's also like a huge reach for a lot of people, so it's like, I always kind of say, like, let's start with just not hating our body. Let's just start there. Let's just start with respecting that our body knows what it needs to do. I talk with clients a lot about set point theory, and it's like, I know you may not want to hear this, but your body really does have a size that it really likes, that it's comfortable in. And, we need to trust that it knows what it's doing. And again, that can be hard because it may be larger than what you'd like it to be. And you might have a physician telling you need to lose weight, and like all of that pressure, and friends and family may be telling you that. So, bottom line is that's completely normal to have that fear. But there needs to be the work on, who am I as a person? I am separate. There's more to me than my body. So I work a lot with clients on, but who are you as a person? What do you like about you as a person? And I mean, sadly, I have clients who can't come up with one thing when I ask them that. Mm-hmm. And so, that really is a huge focus. And I think what I have seen beneficial with that is working with people in a group setting who have the same, who are sort of in similar spots and in trying to give up dieting and just sort of accept themselves and work towards intuitive eating. And, finding a group of people who are doing the same thing, even if that's just a Facebook group, is I think a huge piece of that. To know that you're not alone in this is huge, and to really start noticing, bodies of other sizes. And, looking at your social media feed and following people who are really talking about body neutrality and body positivity and all of those things, and really starting to work on that kind of self-acceptance. And again, I truly feel like that's the hardest piece. So, I'm not giving you some great try this, and this, because I don't think there is such a thing. But, really looking at, these are messages that were meant to make someone money. These were messages meant to keep people down.
Yeah, if anything, we should be really pissed off about
Yes! Oh my gosh, yes. Absolutely.
Like, how dare they?
Yes,
put
absolutely.
That on us?
Absolutely. And I think, and sadly, it's like, certainly lots of people have, parents who kind of, gave them the same messages that, they also were, sort of drowning in diet culture. They didn't know any better, and I always say to people, like, this isn't yours. Like, give it back. Like, this, nobody, like, is born like hating their body and thinking they need to starve themselves. Nobody
it's so
is.
true. No, baby.
No,
That's exactly
no,
right.
that is absolutely just thrown on us. And it's like, you know what? I don't have to put up with this anymore. I don't have to, I say to people like, do you literally want to buy into that system? Because you are literally buying with money into a system that is using your insecurity to keep you down.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's one of those things. I really feel that our work as adults is to analyze our beliefs and decide which ones we want to keep.
Yes.
Through our lives, growing up, we have all of these beliefs that are given to us by parents, by society, by our friends, by teachers. Every person that we come into contact with, we learn from.
Sure.
And some of the things we learn are really valuable, and some of the things that we learn are really damaging.
Yes.
And so it's up to us as grown-ups, as full-fledged adults, to make a decision about those beliefs. And that can be really hard because so often our identity is wrapped up in that belief.
Absolutely.
And I think that it takes a lot of courage to tackle that. But I also think whose life am I living?
Right.
If I haven't decided which beliefs are my own.
You're absolutely right. And I think what's so hard is when, I have so many clients who they're still surrounded by people who do nothing but talk about the latest diet. And it's really hard to be the person in the room who's like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. But you're absolutely right. To be able to choose that for yourself, you have every right to do that. Every right to do that.
Well, and you said that you're not going to give us a step-by-step, but I feel like you did a little bit.
Oh, good.
And that is like, okay, these are the things that I got out of what you said. Surround yourself with like-minded people.
Yes.
So community and connection. So maybe that's a Facebook group. Maybe that's a real person, like in real life group.
Right.
Whatever it is, if you are surrounded by people who are promoting, if you will, and believing that same belief, it's going to be easier to embody that.
Absolutely.
And by embody, I mean not just believe it in your head, but believe it in your body.
You're absolutely right. Yes.
So community. And then the next thing was awareness. Be aware of what diet culture is doing. Like it's stealing your money. It's stealing your time. It's making you believe something that is not your belief.
Right.
It's really awful.
Yeah. Right.
And be aware of that. So when you see an ad or you see a new app that is supposedly not really a diet,
right.
like be smart about it and be aware and analyze these things. And then the third thing was really start to appreciate all sizes and look at bodies of all shapes and sizes and colors.
Yes.
And really find appreciation for that. I actually have a really good friend who has a facial disformity, disformation. And I love what she's doing because she is in a group of people that are bringing awareness to faces that look different.
That's amazing.
And she shares this on her Instagram and Facebook feed. And, I know her personally. I've spent time in the same room with this woman, and she is so sparkly and so beautiful. And I don't even notice that there is a difference there. And so a lot of that is just about surrounding yourself with different people than you.
Yes.
And saying like, look at that shape. That is amazing. She looks awesome, whatever that looks like.
Absolutely.
And that really, I think, will lead you into being more accepting of your own differences.
I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay, so I want to talk about one more thing, and you just briefly touched on it, but I think it's really important. And that is how to set boundaries for yourself when you are on this journey of intuitive eating and really accepting yourself at whatever size you are. Because like you said, it's diet culture so insidious. You know, you get together with your girlfriends. I have a girls' night out planned for tonight. I'm super excited. I am sure at some point one of the women will say something about their size and not loving the size that they're at.
Yeah.
So how do we set loving boundaries for ourselves and the people around us?
Well, I think, first of all, for some people that's incredibly difficult, and I want to validate that. Like that you may never be the person who sort of says, you know what, guys, I'm not talking about this anymore. You may never be the person who says, I'm doing intuitive eating now and I'm done with diet culture, because that can be not a safe thing sometimes. So if that's you, there's nothing wrong with that. Then it's more about what you are sort of saying to yourself internally when you're in these situations, and sort of saying, okay, and I think a lot of people, the farther they get into sort of like the world of, anti-diet intuitive eating, the more when they're surrounded by that, they're just like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to hear this. It's almost, it's kind of sad, when you hear, again, a group of women gets together and this is all we have to talk about. It can feel kind of like, kind of deflating. So, for some people, it really is just going to be how you can sort of, kind of talk yourself through a situation where diet talk is being, discussed, and to be able to not kind of let that get to you and sort of say, what I'm doing works for me. Like we've talked about, this is what is authentic to me. And to remember, obviously, that the people who are talking about this are just, maybe they've never heard of another way. Maybe they've never heard of intuitive eating or health at every size. If you're somebody who's comfortable sort of saying, you know what, I would love it if we talked about something other than this. Or, saying things about, it's hard for me to hear you talking about your body in that way. Like I would love for us to be like a group or have a friendship where we can really just build each other up and not focus on our flaws and our weight and those sorts of things. So, and again, that's going to depend on the people who are saying this. And certainly there are folks who, I have a lot of clients who have, with moms who are absolutely stuck in diet culture, and that's probably never going to change. And it's one of those things of, we just don't discuss it. Like we don't discuss it. Like you have a right to tell somebody you can't comment on what I'm eating and what I'm doing and what my body is. Like I'm not going to listen to that anymore. And again, those are hard conversations.
Yeah. And I think really approaching with great compassion, your friends.
Yes.
And I think of my friends. My friends would never comment on my body or what I'm eating, but they might comment on their body and what they're eating.
Yes.
And to me, I always have deep compassion for that, because I know that feeling.
Right. You know where that's coming from.
And I have felt that. And I will always say, and this, when anybody that I know comments on their physical appearance, I will say, hey, don't talk about my friend like that.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Yes.
And if it's someone I'm really close with, I'll just say, I love you no matter what you look like. That doesn't matter to me. And just really having so much compassion, because they're stuck in the same cycle.
Absolutely.
They're not trying to do anything that we didn't once try to do.
Absolutely.
It's that same cycle that we've all been sucked into.
Yes.
And the more that we can be compassionate for each other, I think the more we can support each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, again, there's people out there who have never heard that there's a different way of doing this, have never heard that they don't have to be doing this. And I think it's, I think it's becoming more, kind of widespread, but it's if you've never heard of it, then of course you're just going to keep doing what you've always been doing. So
that's exactly right. And I always tell my clients that boundaries are for ourselves.
Right.
This is my fence that I put up to protect myself, and it's my job to enforce those boundaries. It's not anybody else's job.
Right.
To do that.
I love
they're
that.
mine, and they're to protect me. And so I remind myself of that when I'm going into a situation where I might feel like things like that might come up. So whatever I need to do to protect myself.
That's great.
Works in the moment of that.
Absolutely. I love that.
Well, Kim, this is all so good. I feel like we could go on for lots longer talking about this. I mean, we really didn't even talk much. We just glanced on the idea that the size of our bodies is really an oppressive thing. Like there's a lot of oppression in that.
Oh, yes.
And, that's something that for those of you who are listening, if you're curious about that, I encourage you to dig in to that, because when you start going there, it's just appalling.
Yes. Oh my God. Like you said, it's like you're just pissed off. And then it's like, forget it. I'm never doing this again.
Yeah. So if you need motivation, that's a good way. That's a good way to do it.
Yes.
But Kim, I'm so interested to know from you who, practices and teaches intuitive eating, this deep way of connecting with your inner voice. What does your inner voice say to you these days?
So my inner voice tends to say things like, good enough is good enough.
Yeah. Yes. I love your inner voice.
So I tend to be sort of a I definitely have parts of me that are like, no, you need to be doing this and you need to be doing this. And I've really been trying to, I'm sort of in the process of sort of cutting back on therapy and doing more coaching. And so, that's been a whole, just a whole learning curve with that. But I'm not like, I don't have as many clients scheduled each week. And so there are parts of me that are like, well, you're not working hard enough and you're not, and so I'm really trying to, constantly tap into that, inner voice that says you are also allowed to rest. That there's no, like this, again, this whole idea of a 40-hour work week is man-made, and so you are allowed to sort of go with the flow and do what works for you that day. You're allowed to lay on the couch all day if that's what your inner voice says. You're allowed to go out in the garden if that's what works right now. Or you're allowed to, to get some work done. So just really trying to focus on what do I need? What does my body need? And more self-care. I'm not, even as a therapist, I'm not great with self-care. So I'm really trying to focus more on that and tune into that and know what I need.
I love it. You have a very smart inner voice, as we all do.
We all do. Absolutely.
We all do.
Yes.
So Kim, if people are interested in your work, and I know that you also have a Facebook group. So if you're looking for a community, I actually just joined it.
Oh,
today,
you do?
So
Wonderful.
I'm excited to be in there. And I just side note, I just want to say, I actually have been in a Peloton. I have a Peloton bike, which if anyone's been listening to my podcast, they know this because I talk about it all the time. But I joined a Peloton Healthy at Every Size group, and it is amazing.
That is so good to know.
Yeah, and it's a big group. I mean, I think that there are almost 2,000 people.
Wow.
And it is really great. It has been a real help and comfort to me during this time to be surrounded by people who are speaking the language of love and acceptance.
That is amazing. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I have a couple of clients with Pelotons, and that there's aspects of Pelotons that can be triggering. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
There are a lot of Peloton groups that are not HAES and intuitive eating friendly. So I'll be sure to, I'll get you the link to that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
But you also have a Facebook group, and then you're on social and all of that. Why don't you tell people where they can find all of that?
Great. Yes. So my Facebook group is called Food and Body Freedom with Dr. Kim Daniels. My website is yourweightisnotyourworth.com. And that has pretty much everything in terms of how to work with me. But I do have a free e-course on why diets don't work and how to quit them for good, which is at bit.ly/exiting diet culture. I have like a workbook group for people who would like to work through the intuitive eating workbook group together, which I found to be really helpful for folks. And again, that's on my website as well. And Instagram, I'm at Kim Daniels Psyd, which is PSYD.
Great. And I'll put links to all of that in
Great.
the show notes and in the podcast app that you're listening to, so you can click right on over and connect with Kim. Join her group if you feel your inner voice is saying that would be a good move for you.
Yeah.
And Kim, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you for being a guide for us into this new way of loving ourselves and of listening to our inner voice.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
I hope that your takeaway from this conversation and the last interview that we did here is really that this is a conversation about compassion. This is a conversation about loving yourself and honoring yourself and your needs and nourishing yourself and nurturing yourself. It is an important conversation to be having, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. So you can always shoot me an email. You can DM me over on Instagram at Kelly J. Covert. Wherever it makes sense for you, please reach out and let me know how these episodes are hitting for you, because I'd love to hear where you are on this journey, and I'd love to talk to you about it. If you are struggling with your self-compassion and your self-care, check out Give Yourself Permission, Pocket Permission Slips for Self-Care and Compassion on Amazon.com. You can just search Kelly Covert, or you can go to kellycovert.com/books and find the link there. More than anything, I want you to understand that you are enough right now. There's nothing that you need to change, that you need to fix, that you need to make different, that you need to add or subtract or lose or gain. Right this minute, you are worthy.